Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Place to Soar, where our motto is step out and redesign, and the focus is always on you. I'm your host, Anita Russell, and this is my very good friend, Gail Talaferro. She's my co-host, and we have a very, very esteemed guest with us this evening. He is an artist, a local artist, and his name is Kenneth Lewis, and I'm going to start off by reading a little bit of his bio. Kenneth Lewis is a 55-year-old self-instructed artist who began painting on canvas at the unusual age of 47. Kenneth has a special relationship and deep sensitivity for what he produces. For the last couple of decades, he has expressed his artistic creativity through house painting, interior design, and furniture repurposing. On New Year's Day in 2008, Kenneth painted his very, very first piece and called it Contemplation. He quickly learned that he had a very raw and latent gift, and he painted more as a hobby from 2008 until the death of his beautiful mother in 2012. His mother's departure from Earth ignited the artist's flow in him. Kenneth's mother could always draw, but she never attempted to embrace or further explore her talent. He knew that he had to create not only for himself, but also for his late mother. So Kenneth, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and why it took you so long to start painting and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Okay. First, I want to say thank you for having me here, Anita and Gail, and it's an honor to be here. And I was so excited, with this opportunity to come here and speak with you all. And so I may have a little bit of the jitters, but I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm one of 7 children. My father was a Baptist minister. He first was at First Baptist Church in South Bound Brook. That's where I grew up. And I graduated from Bound Brook High School. And he also had Antioch Christian Church in New Brunswick, was there. And then he retired, a few years back. Both my parents are deceased. And like I said, I'm one of 7 children. I'm in the middle, 2 girls and a boy older and 2 girls and a boy younger. As you were saying in the bio, my mother, she would always sketch at the kitchen table. I was a sports guy growing up, playing basketball, football, track, and all that. So I saw artists as, I liked art. I always knew I loved art and artists, but I never thought it was something, for me. I was so much focused on, doing sports. And but I knew I always loved art. I actually had a frame shop for almost 10 years as well, a custom frame shop. So I was always around art and always admired artists. But around 2007, towards the end of that year, I had been married for 20-some years, got divorced, and this was a year after that. I'm sitting at home, and that October, I had bought a canvas and some paint, and it sat there from October, November, December. I didn't touch it, but I felt like there was just something I wanted to do.
Oh, nice.
And it was this urge that was coming up me, and I just didn't know what it was. And so I put the New Year's Day, I said, okay, what are you going to do different with your life this year? And so I was in this contemplative mode, and I sat the canvas on the easel, and I waited for the ball to drop on 2008, and I cracked open the paint and I start painting. And what I realized, I just had a natural gift to see an image and recreate that image without even thinking about it. I could just really just create a face or whatever just naturally. And so I started painting, and I started really.
So what did that feel like though when you started?
It was like a spiritual thing for me. It was like I could see the end result. It was like I can literally see the vision of what I was going to do prior to me finishing it. And I'll go back to that when I tell you about why I named my studio that. So I started, creating the painting, and I saw wow, this is really coming out. And I didn't realize I knew how to shade and all these things. Mind you, I didn't even know the names of the brushes that I was using. I didn't know how to mix paint or anything. I didn't know anything about depth or, like I said, shading, but I could do it. And at that point, I really, really knew it was a gift, but I didn't realize how much of a gift it was at that time. So I painted, and I just painted for fun for a few years. And then 2012, Oh, and let me tell you about contemplative. Contemplative, it's a picture of a man, and he's looking off to the side, and he has his hands like sort of like this, and he's looking off this way. And it's represented to me the past, and there was like a little bit of a shadow going that way, but then there was a bright light like going into the future. So he was contemplating the future.
And that was kind of where you were at the same time.
And I was at that point. And so that's what came out. And then I realized that, you know, once I had certain feelings and urges for certain things, or I could see some image, or I could see something that inspires me, and then I would have this urge to create something from it. So fast forward to 2012, I was sitting in my house and I was painting this woman. I had this urge to paint this elderly woman. And I started painting her, and right when I finished, the phone rang, and my mother had stopped breathing. No one has ever seen this picture. I will never sell it, and I don't even know if I'm ready to show it to anybody yet. But it was a picture of a woman sitting there, an elderly woman at peace. And right after that, I got the call about my mother. From that point on, I still wasn't in the mode where I was really doing this as a career. I still was doing it for fun. I would post things on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those things, but still not trying to do it as a career. And then my sister got diagnosed with cancer. And I moved her in my house, and she had just retired, and within a year and a half, she had passed. And I dedicated one of my paintings, and we can go, it's on my blog, you know, the information about dedicating the painting to my sister. But at that point, I knew that I had to, when she became ill, and she had worked for 38 years at her job and retired, and then got a diagnosis of cancer 2 months after she retired, I knew that I had to live now and just be happy. And so I just became so open, and I became so appreciative of every day, of the people around me, and everything that I had. And I no longer thought about all the things I don't have. I became so appreciative of everything that I had. And then that gift started to explode even more. I started painting at a frantic pace. In a 7-year time period, I've had over 300 paintings.
Oh, wow.
And my paintings average about 5 to 6 feet each, 5 foot by 6 foot, 6 foot by 6 foot. And I also noticed that I love to paint with bursts of color and energy in my paintings. And I also, my sister lived with me in the room there where she stayed. I gave her my master bedroom, and I made that into my studio, and I call it the KJL Art Sanctuary. And she actually passed on Easter Sunday in that room. And I walk barefoot in the room. It's a spiritual connection with that room, and just my mind just flows and goes free, you know, within there. So I call it the KJL Art Sanctuary, you know, when I go in there. I'm trying to think of anything else I could put with that right there. My sister, I'm getting a little, because I talked about my mom and my sister, it
gets emotional.
Yeah, it gets me a little bit emotional.
Yes.
But you know, when you had that awakening, that's when you was 47?
47.
47, you had that awakening, and then next thing you know, now you're happy because you're doing something that you love to do. And that is just so awesome, because people, when we get older, we tend to shy away from the things that we have an interest in, because some of us think it's too late, but not you. You just went ahead and you just flourished in doing something that you actually love to do. And that's really awesome.
Yeah. I've always been the type of person that, you know, if I do something, I put, you know, a lot of energy into it. And I really have a lot of, you know, confidence in myself. And I have confidence in others as well, but I have confidence in myself as well. And it doesn't, to me, I don't look for approval from people for what I do as far as the art. So I'm so natural. I don't think about, is someone going to like this piece of artwork that I create? Because I'm creating it with love. And so most of my posts and things, you'll see #much-love. And that just means that I put a whole lot of love into what I do. It's just a whole lot of love. and it comes out and it shows. And the people that buy art from me, they like it really resonates with them. They say, we can tell that you really enjoy doing this and that you put a lot of love in there. So I've always put much love on everything that I have.
So there's another aspect of your story, and that is the fact that you sort of made that transition from painting as a hobby, so to speak, and now you use the word career.
Yes.
Because what I know about you is that you've always had an entrepreneur spirit. Like when I met you is when you had the bookstore.
Yes.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about some of those milestone things that happened in your life along the way that also contributed to where you are now as an artist and as a thriving business person in the arts?
Well, I got to go back to Bill and Debbie Kaufman. They're friends of mine. Besides my father, who was very entrepreneurial, he would buy houses, flip houses. Me and my brothers would be in there working. We hated it, but now I can work on things myself, but we hated it. But my father was that type. He was, besides being a minister, he worked at General Motors and he was entrepreneurial. So he was always 7 kids and he was the only one to work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So he had to provide for 7 kids. And I just watched my father and his work ethic. And so I got work ethic from my father. I got the artistic skills, I truly believe, from my mother. I believe that what I'm doing is just my mother coming out of me.
Yes.
And that's why you'll notice, I'm going to go to finish to what you were saying, but if you notice, I paint a lot of women. I have such a high degree of respect for women. I actually have a series that I started of sculptures, and it's for the strength of women, and every single painting or sculpture in there is going to be some form of representation of the strength of women. And I think, you know, at the last art reception I have a piece called Nuts and Bolts.
Yes,
and I'll tell you a little bit more about that one later. But then Debbie and Bill Kaufman, they were a couple that owned a coffee company. And I was just from Fairleigh Dickinson, and I was working for Lincoln Properties in Plainsboro. And they came in, they had a coffee service. And I was in the office and I started talking and we made friends. And the husband asked me, it was just the two of them, they just started this business. And he asked me, would I come and work for them? He asked me how much I was making. He said, would you come work for us? And so I decided to go work for him. And I learned a lot about being an entrepreneur from Debbie and Bill Kaufman.
Got it.
The 3 of us took their business, and they're still in business. It's called Polar Spring Water in Robbinsville, New Jersey. And they were initially called Coffee Man. So that, you know, my entrepreneurial curiosity was piqued working with them and learning a lot about running a business. And then when I left from there, I started Mind Builders, which was a bookstore and custom frame shop. And I put it as a frame, I had the frame shop in there because I loved art. Again, at this point, I've never tried to paint anything, but I just loved art. So running that store, Mind Builders, for almost 10 years was a great experience as well. And then I went from there, I went back into the property management for a while, and then I opened up another frame shop. So I know it seems like it's a lot, but being 55, that's quite a few years of doing.
But that's, I mean, when you think about it, though, that's how we're supposed to live, because we have so much inside of us. And you are an example of a person who, along the journey in their life, as you discovered more about yourself, you put that into practice. That's commendable.
Yeah, and I have no fear, and I feel that, like, a lot of people, they may look in the Bible and say you have nothing to fear but fear itself and all this stuff, but they don't really believe that.
Right,
not having fear is something that I don't have fear. I'm not afraid of succeeding or failing. I'm not afraid.
But you know what? But that happens when you're walking in purpose.
Yes.
When you walk in purpose, you're not fearful.
Yes, absolutely. Because everything that's happening is supposed to happen.
Yes.
I'm just living life and allowing life to take its course. And it's wonderful. My friend Carol, my lady friend Carol, she is on the same page and constantly reminds me of those things as well, about, always same. And it's important to have people around you too that, are encouraging and supportive. And I do have that. My son and my daughter, they work every exhibition with me. And it's a blessing.
So that's that's another interesting point then, because you went from experiencing your father being this entrepreneur, and now you're instilling that now in your children as
Yes.
well. So it's sort of like this legacy, if you will, within your family of being entrepreneurs, and not and also instilling in your children that you don't have to be fearful.
Not
that
at all.
you can just
And
do
you
your
know
thing.
what? And it's important how you. It's real good that you said that, because a lot of people think that when you leave a legacy, it's always about money. But
Yes,
it's also
yes.
about education, knowledge.
Yes.
You know, teaching the skill set to those our sons and daughters and stuff like that. That's legacy as well.
Exactly. And I think, to your point, I think a lot of people think of legacy as like when I'm gone. But that's not it. You're continuing a legacy that was started with your father, and I would be willing to bet if you were to trace it back before him, that you would be able to see how that legacy is generational. But it's not the kind of thing where you wait until afterwards.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're living the legacy that your father instilled in you, and you're also instilling that in your own children. That's fantastic.
So I guess
my
that's called the
grandson.
living legacy.
Yeah,
Like with
exactly.
your grandson, how you was telling me earlier that now he had a paintbrush in his hand, and now he's into being creative with the paints.
First
and
thing he does
living
when he comes.
legacy.
That's the first thing he does when he comes to my house. Pop. Let's go paint. Let's go to the studio.
Nice.
And he wants to come in there, and he'll mess around for a little bit, and then he gets off to playing something else. But he focuses on that, and he's like a sponge, and that's so important. You're right; it's so important. And I just want to set a good example for my children, and for my grandchildren, and all my other nieces and nephews, and all of them as well.
Yeah.
They all are very, very happy. Everyone's so surprised because this just came out of nowhere. And I said, but that's where everything comes from, nowhere. It's like, that's where everything comes from, into existence. You just have to believe it, have it in your heart, and it'll flow. It'll just come out, whatever it is.
Exactly. And it becomes your life journey. So again, a lot of the things that you have talked about, your past with the book, because I've known you when I first moved into this area, your bookstore was one of the first establishments that I, and plus because it was owned by an African American, that was very important to me. I was raising up my children. I loved the books that you had in there and all of that. So when I think of Kenny, that's what I automatically go back to, is the bookstore. But now, obviously, seeing this. And so all of those things along the way, along your journey, that was preparation.
Absolutely.
For you to do what it is you're doing now.
Yep. Everything. Even when I got the little beatings when I was bad at home. But all of it was all just sculpting me, and and if all I had to do was just not resist what is. Yeah. And just try to stay positive, and just try to do the best you can every day, and that's all you have to do.
You know what? And it's that simple once we give in to our giftings. Because a lot of times we struggle because we have so many other things to think about. Life gets in the way of our purpose.
Absolutely.
Working at a job gets in the way of our purpose. But what I like about you is that at a later age, you went ahead and walked in your purpose, and you started fulfilling it. And now you're happier, your life is different, and and that's how life is intended to be. And not so much of a struggle of doing something that you really don't want to do, but once you walk into your purpose and the giftings that God has given you, everything is a lot easier.
And you want to share it. And this all started with me really, like, also just wanting to share the art that I was creating. I was letting people see it. So next thing I know, my mother has passed, and my sister, had the cancer and was living with me. And I did my first show. This was in 2000. My mother passed in December of 2012. And my sister moved into my house in the beginning of 2013, once she had got the diagnosis. And February of 2013, I had my first art exhibition at Trenton Social. And there were other people, the curator of the show. I went there a few months beforehand. I watched other art. And I'm also the type of person that I will look at what someone else is doing. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to make sure I'm prepared for it.
Yes.
And to be as successful as possible. So I went there, I watched other artists, see how they hung their stuff, see how their labels were and all this stuff. So I did that for a few months before my exhibition. It was my first exhibition. People were asking me, aren't you afraid, putting your art out there like that? I said, I've already been doing it. And I said, on top of that, I'm not afraid. I said, I'm either going to sell a lot of art, I'm going to sell a little bit of art, or I'm going to sell no art.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's all good. So
yes.
I went there, put my paintings in there, and I had in my mind that I'm going to do well. And I came prepared. I had bios. No one had ever done that. I had the way my labels were. I did a fundraiser and gave a part of the proceeds of the money that I made. I gave it to Boyd, Building Our Youth Development.
Nice.
So I donated, money to Boyd as well. And it was one of the best shows they had there. And it was because I believed it was going to be one of the best shows they had there, even before I got there. And it wasn't a thing of an arrogance or anything like that. It was just a belief that set the intention, say this is what I want this to be. I want this show to be fabulous. And then do what you have to do and watch it unfold.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's it. And have faith the whole, way, no matter what. And so it turned out I ended up selling 13 paintings.
Awesome.
My very first show.
What I'd like you to talk about is you mentioned your exhibitions. So I recently attended your exhibition out at the Hopewell Valley Winery. So I definitely want our audience to be aware of that. But then I also want you to talk about what you got going on in Chelsea, New York.
Yep. Okay, so there's two things. So one day, me and Carol, and it's again not being afraid.
Yes.
Let me say this before I say that. I relatively new in doing art. I know artists that have been doing it for 25, 30 years all their life. And they come and ask me for advice because they see that the no fear and just allowing things to happen. They're like, how you do? I've been doing this all my life. I don't have a website. I don't do this. I'm like saying, but you can. It's a very simple thing. Just create a website. You don't have exhibitions or you're not in galleries or anything, then go to galleries or create your own exhibition. In the beginning, I was like, okay, I have big art, so I have to try to figure out places that can accommodate that. So instead of me waiting for someone to ask me, do you want to do a show? I go to places. I went to Ewing Mall. I curated 2 art exhibitions with 6 or 7 other artists on both those shows. I created it myself. These are all things you can do yourself instead of waiting around for someone else to do it. And a lot of artists, they're stuck in the more creative side and they don't think about the business side of it as well. So I do both of those things like pretty well. And that's all I tell them. I said, you got to look at the business side of it and spend half your time doing that and half your time doing the art as well. Which takes me to, I went to Chelsea, New York. Me and Carol went to Chelsea and we said we're going to visit. We got a book from Barnes & Nobles on all art galleries in New York.
Nice.
So we went there and we said, we're just going to go there and talk to them. Went to the very first street we went on. We went to, in the Chelsea area in New York. We stopped at one gallery and then we went into Agora Gallery. And I went in there and I told them, I said, I'm an artist. And I said, I want you to see some of my images and see what you think. And, what would it take for me to exhibit here? And I showed the young lady and I was like, I'm a very good artist. And I'm saying, I'm like really pumping it up to her. And she looked at it. She went back and called another lady out. She started looking at it and she said, okay, give me your card and all that stuff. And we'll test. Before we left New York, they had emailed me. And they said, we want you to submit your bio, some other information. Less than 2 weeks after that, they sent me a letter saying, we would love for you to join the family of artists that we have here. And I signed a 2-year contract with them.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
My first exhibition in New York is July 14th. And the art will be up for 4 weeks at Agora Gallery.
So how do people find out? Like if somebody in our audience wants to come and see your show, where do they get the information from?
Well, on my website, I have a section for existing or current and future exhibitions. So there's always going to be a list of the exhibitions on my website, or they can go to my Facebook page.
Now, what's your website though?
It's KJL Art Sanctuary. Like I said, it's the KJL Art Sanctuary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so the exhibit that we went to a few weeks ago, and we saw that you did have the repurposed furniture.
Yes.
And there's one special piece, nuts and bolts.
Yes.
You want to tell us about that?
Yep. And so the nuts and bolts piece, but to get, this was the other second part of it too, and I'm going to tell you about nuts and bolts was when I'm telling you about going out and doing things. They've been having shows at Hopewell Valley Vineyard. They have a guy that curates there, and you know, we've talked a few times, but I never curated, I never participated in any of the things. So I was like, hey, I can do my own show. And I went right there to the owners, went in there and said, listen, I'm an artist. Here's my images right here. I want to do it a solo show here. And so the show went so well that, you know, that you guys attended, they booked me for June. So June 3rd, I'm going to have the whole month of June another solo show at Hopewell Valley Vineyard.
And that information will be on your website.
And that's going to be on the website. But at Hopewell Valley Vineyard, the piece you were talking about, which is from The Strength of Women, I decided I don't just paint on canvas. I paint on oriented strand board. I paint on tarps. I paint on roof material. There's paintings on there. It looks like it's on canvas, but it's on roofing material. I paint with brushes. I paint with rollers. I paint with my feet. I paint with my hands. I paint with palette knives. I paint with fabric. So I don't even just use brushes, because now I'm expanding, because I figured that anything that's not growing or expanding, it's like, and if it stays stagnant, that's like a degenerative form. It's like you're going backwards. So I feel that I continually have to grow as an artist. So I've branched out, and now I'm into the sculptures. And I went from painting things that, like the piece I have here, multifaceted, of 36 to 48, I went to large canvases. And then I start creating the canvases. I start stretching the canvases and then making them to whatever size or shape that I wanted to make them. And then I started with the sculptures. And the series that I'm doing is the Strength of Women series. And I feel that women are the nuts and bolts of society. And I made it out of step aerobic mats, tarp, tile adhesive, grout, nuts, bolts, spark plugs, a woman's torso, layers and layers of paint, fabric, curtains, thermalware, and created this image. And it's like of a woman like embedded into the women, and it's like the birth of humanity. And I feel that the very first beings or creatures or whatever you want to say on this earth, I believe they were women. And
so actually, Kenny, we're almost out of town, and I really want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. So is there a phone number, website? Give all the information so that they can get in touch with you. The phone number
that they can reach me at is 609-372-6022. My website is KJL Art Sanctuary. I'm on Facebook as Kenneth Lewis Sr. My son is Junior. And my Facebook page is Kenneth Lewis Sr. Artist, KJL Art Sanctuary. But you can see it once you go on my page, you can click onto there as well.
Okay, so I just want you to leave one nugget of information for somebody that might be out there struggling with a gift that they want to kind of burst forth, or just one nugget of information or wisdom that you can leave for our audience. You got like 10 seconds.
Believe in yourself and have no fear, and be humble. Stay humble and prayerful and grateful. That's what you have to do.
Okay, excellent. Amen. So you heard it right here from Kenny Lewis. Make sure you go and check him out in New York at the Chelsea Theater, and go check him out online as well. Thank you for joining us.